and welcome to a special edition of Resource Review. On today's programme, we'll be exploring learning platforms and looking at them at both primary and secondary level. Now, along the way, we'll be defining exactly what we mean by a learning platform and looking at a selection that might go some way to meet the needs of your school. Firstly, our primary selection. A learning platform that's designed specifically for younger children. Another that's modular and remotely managed. And a course management system that's open source. I'm joined today by Roger Brodie, an independent consultant who specialises in ICT for learning, and Roger's spearheaded a number of initiatives on learning platforms, personalised learning and building schools for the future. On the panel today is Ray Barker, Director of the British Educational Suppliers Association, and Ian Usher, e-learning coordinator for Buckinghamshire County Council. Now, over in the test lab, Matthew Tosh, our resident ICT expert, is standing by to give us the lowdown on the resources before we see them in use in the classroom. Now, I don't know about you, but I find the terminology that's bandied around rather confusing. We hear about learning platforms, virtual learning environments, course management systems and other terms. Roger, what do they all mean and how do they fit together?
I prefer to think of this as a digital environment for a school. And then within this digital environment, there are various elements that interwork. Right. So you have a learning environment, which is the bit that the teachers and the children will interact with for learning. You have a management information system that can be incorporated into a bigger environment.
Ian?
But essentially, a virtual learning environment is part of a learning platform, and I think schools are being encouraged down the route of learning platforms, and they might start with a number of elements that will eventually form something much bigger.
Well, Ray, what about suppliers? What's the situation there?
Well, Bector has stepped in to look at technical standards particularly and say to schools, well, if you want systems that will, for example, have an interoperable format, big word, then there are certain companies that will do this for you. So the companies have had to jump through various hoops, various testing procedures, but there is something called a framework now on the Bector site with lists of companies who have jumped through this hoop. So schools, local authorities can go to these companies to see what kind of services they can provide. OK,
well, Roger, tell us about our first learning platform. It's called Kowari.
Kowari is a learning platform that's been designed specifically for very young children, and it can be used by children who are not even able to read yet. Because, as you will see, everything is linked into pictures as well as words, so a child can decide to get into a certain section because they recognise the picture. They can, for instance, get into creating pictures.
Now, we're going to see Kowari in use at the New Invention School, which is in Willenhall near Walsall. And I understand that they got parents involved as they implemented it. How did that work?
Now that they've got the learning platform, the children can be creating things digitally on the computers in the schools. Those can then be put up onto a gallery, and the parents can look at that from home, logging onto the school system, and can be talking to their children about what they've done in school that day. Now, that's immensely motivating to get the parents involved like that.
Fantastic. Well, before we go over to the New Invention School, let's go and visit Matthew, who's in the test lab, and he's going to give us a demonstration of Kowari.
The version of Kowari I'm using today requires a program to be installed on your computer, but shortly you'll be able to access it via a web browser. Now, if we go into the Teachers section, we'll start at the bottom and you can see the My Work section, and this is where you can manage and store your files. We then have the K-Journal, and this is your electronic diary, and as you'd expect, you can store events and appointments and reminders, and this is also where you specify work for people to do on a particular day. You have a choice of activities. Now, each of these makes use of the integrated chat feature of Kowari or its embedded K-Mail system, which is an email program. Now, K-Mail allows you to send questions to pupils, and they can reply to your questions using email, either text, pictures, or a combination of the two, as you can see here. But that's enough from me. It's time now to go over to New Invention School in Willenhall near Walsall, where we see Alison Mullett and her class using Kowari.
Today we've been using Kowari as a chat perspective. So this has given children a chance to share their ideas, share their thoughts about characters from traditional stories. The email area, like all the other parts of the programme, are accessible from home. But parents are reassured because it's a closed area. So obviously that provides a filter protection for the children. In the other classes today, we've had some children who've been accessing their work that's saved in a shared area on the network system, labelling a castle. It's set out in a diary format, which is very friendly. We find this useful because we can post work and websites for the children to work on at home. All of the teachers can access their class area and their year group area through an administration section. I really feel it's improved children's work in that because the children have such an enthusiasm, immediately they approach the task with far more gusto and are willing to have a try at anything.
Ian, what kind of age do you think young pupils should be introduced to a learning platform?
It's interesting to talk to pupils about this. I did some interviews with some of our year fives who've been doing it for about a year, and almost without exception, their little brothers and sisters wanted to take part. And so we said to them, at what age do you think you could probably get away with starting to do this? And they were pretty universal. Year 3, year 2, we could handle this. And I think if you talk to adults, you get a slightly different answer, and maybe the formal one's more accurate.
Okay. Ray, what advice do you think we could give to schools or to the ICT coordinator about choosing something for young children?
For very young children.
Yeah.
I think that point about parents is essential. You have to keep them in the loop and you have to involve them, because you have to convince parents that this is not what they're going to be doing all the time, that they're still going to be in the sandpit, they're going to be doing outdoor play, they're going to be having hands-on experience.
Learn how to write.
And those kind of things, yes, surprisingly, reading, writing. And I think secondly, and probably more important, is that you have to make sure that you have technical support.
Okay, Roger, well, it's time now to move on to the second learning platform that we're looking at today, and it's Net Media Learning Platform. Roger, tell us a bit about this one.
This is a more complex kind of learning platform. It contains the various kinds of functionality that you would find in most learning platforms. And it's a system which is provided as a centrally hosted system, so that quite often it is provided through the region or through the local authority. So a primary school can start to use certain elements of this.
And is this really aimed at older pupils then, compared to Kawari?
This platform would be used by pupils all the way through from perhaps year 3, year 4, all the way through into secondary school. There is no reason why it couldn't extend right throughout that age range.
Thanks, Roger. Now, Buckhurst Hill Community Primary School uses Essex Grid for Learning's customised version of Net Media Learning Platform, eFolio. But before we go and see it in use, let's go back to Matthew.
We're going to look at how you can customise NetMedia's MyGrid for Learning. Now, when you log in, you get to the My Desktop screen, and it's an organisational page. And both pupils and teachers get this, but teachers have the option of editing it using these buttons here. Now, if we have a look at the My Classes page, this is where you can choose specific classes for different subjects. So we'll go into the biology one here. This page is exactly what the pupils will see when they log in. But as a teacher, again, you have the option of editing what appears on the page. New content can be created, and you can also specify what type of content will appear on each page. Now, if you want to see where your lesson plans and activities are stored, then you scroll down to the e-learning folio, or the ELF. And I'll show you an example here. And as pupils complete and submit work, then it appears in your ELF on the right-hand side, telling you how many submissions there have been, so you can monitor the work that your class is doing. So that's how the resource works. Let's go over now to Buckhurst Hill Community Primary School and Angela Harrison putting it through its paces.
You're going to go to the computer, you're going to log on to your eFolio, you're going to add the property Pizarro. Even though eFolio is obviously Essex Grid for Learning, we maintain our own site. Everything in this school is maintained by an administrator. We've been using it to do a programme called Tudor Challenge, which is a fab way of getting the children to use eFolio and using it at home. And each week they do a task where they have to load on properties, use their eFolio to load on properties, and maybe use Word, maybe use spreadsheets, maybe use some logo, graphical modelling. The beauties of eFolio is any work can be uploaded onto the eFolio page, that when they get at home they log on to their own eFolio page and their work will be there. Children cope really well using the system. They're very, very susceptible to new ideas. They like emailing each other. They like the fact they can change their desktop. You can customise it and have all different colours, and they just love it. They love the new idea of it. The disadvantages of using the system, there's a lot of setup, a lot of administering to be done. And if as a teacher I had to do that, that would be an awful lot of work. Once the system is all set up, it is completely a doddle to use.
Well, Roger, at Buckhurst Hill Primary, their customised net media learning platform is centrally hosted. What are the pros and cons to that situation?
Well, it's absolutely vital that the school can control how they develop the use of this platform in the school. What the school should not have to worry about is the technical side. And that needs to be taken away and dealt with by a company or by a local authority who are dealing with that for them.
Yes. OK, well, panel, what do you guys think?
As the teacher on the video said, it's difficult in schools to be able to do all that work. And I think, along with most other forms of technology, there is a pain threshold, there is a pain barrier to have to go through. And once that's gone through, it actually becomes a solution rather than a problem.
Pain, yes. I mean, Ian, what can schools do to avoid the situation being so painful?
One really useful thing to do is work together with other schools, particularly if you're working in a local authority or a regional broadband consortium, because you can share expertise, resources, you don't all duplicate the same parts of the curriculum. And that particularly applies at primary. And also, ultimately, this is about building something that's sustainable and something that doesn't just last for the next term or this amount of money or whatever, but it's going to go on for as long as it needs to support the school.
Now it's time to move on to the third resource that we're looking at today, and it's called Moodle. Now, I've heard of Moodle, but very much as a course management system for higher education. How does Moodle work for primary schools?
Moodle has, if you like, more flexibility even than the systems we've seen so far. And if, for instance, we have a look at their demonstration site, we can see that there are the general features about how it works to deliver and provide courses. It's possible to set a whole range of assignments. You can structure lessons. You can add in resource areas. You can run e-learning content to the SCORM standard. You've got surveys.
OK. Now one of the key points about Moodle is that it's free to use and download. I mean, it's free because it's an open source piece of software. What does that actually mean, Ray?
I think to a lot of schools it just means it's free.
Right.
And it means it's not a proprietary commercial piece of software, and they see it as not being something that they have to pay for, pay quite a lot of money for often, and they don't use half of it. So, but I mean, absolutely with Roger, I mean, it has a lot of very positive features, but schools have to be absolutely aware of the fact that unless they have local authority support, I think, or technical support, they're on their own.
Ian, I hear you're a bit of a fan of Moodle.
Well, we do use it as our virtual learning environment for both primary and secondary. It's used all the way from infants all the way up to post-16. And I think that tells you something about how flexible it is. We offer everything that is all the kind of technical important stuff that you don't need to go wrong, and we kind of take care of that and almost abstract that away from the schools.
And schools must be very grateful for that, are they?
Yeah, most of them are. I think also another reason is it gives them the ability to go at their own pace. They don't then have to think, right, I've got a year's licence for this and crumbs, we're 6 months in, what's going to happen now?
OK, well, it's time now to move on to our learning platforms for secondary level. But before we do, let's recap on our primary resources. We've looked at Kowari from Simica Limited, Net Media Learning Platform from Net Media Education, and Moodle from Moodle.org. Now, within the secondary half of our programme, we're going to be considering a management information system designed specifically for schools, a self-contained learning platform, and a portal system that unites platform resources. And let's now consider our first resource. Now, Roger, this isn't strictly a learning platform. It's a management information system called sims.net. Remind us of the distinction and tell us a bit about Sims.
When you get into the secondary school, you've got a much more complex organisational environment, and the learning platform will need to integrate and interwork with the management information system. So if you look at what's available in the sims.net package, you've got modules such as the Assessment Manager, and Assessment for Learning is a critical part of the learning process. You've got Lesson Monitor, you've got Parents Gateway, and you've got the Timetable and Curriculum Organisation. And all of those things need to interwork and be integrated fully with the learning platform and virtual learning environment functionality.
Well, thanks, Roger. Now let's go back over to Matthew, who's going to show us a few more features of sims.net.
Sims.net allows you to access various areas of a management information system via a single user interface. And you can see some of the modules here on the left hand side of the screen. We've got Attendance, the Assessment Manager and the Examinations Organiser. But supposing I want to look for a particular student, well, we can use the focus menu, and this allows you to hone in on different areas of the database. So all I need to do is type in the pupil's name. I'll select the photo, and there we have it. Now within the record you've got links to the family and home details, medical information, that sort of thing. But we can also go to class information. I can click on the registration group here. Alternatively, we can pull up a student's attendance record. And within a pupil record you've also got links to detailed documents about that pupil, so you could search for an IEP, for example. So that's how you get around in sims.net. It's time now to go over to St Paul's Catholic College in Burgess Hill, West Sussex, to see how it's being used.
It's in Year 7 RE, and then go to Forums Plus, and then you'll see a page that looks like this.
Well, sims.net has been used for many years within this school, and one of the key things I think with sims.net that I like in terms of the data management system is the power to which you can manipulate and use that data. That data is also then available to everybody and every teacher in the school. I like the fact then that it can be used not merely as a recording tool, but really as a tool for proactive management.
With sims.net, we can use it to take registrations, we can use it to keep mark sheets, agree target grades with students, and we can also write our reports on them.
It's just a really good tool. As a tutor, I can see where all my pupils, all the students have been for that day. So if they've been late for a lesson, I can pick up on that and deal with that. All the parent details are there as well, so to contact home is very quick too, which is lovely.
I would say initially the workload went up and goes up for teachers. And I think managers in schools need to be very aware that they need to have provision for that, so they need to provide time for teachers. I think teachers have seen the benefits of what it can do. They've certainly looked to the very positive aspects of having their online materials available 24/7.
Well, we've only scratched the surface of what sims.net can do. But Ian, I was wondering, more generally speaking, how does the school effectively integrate its management information system into the day-to-day life of the school?
The whole e-learning side of things might come out in extending that beyond the classroom, allowing reflection further on. But when you've got that precious time of an hour or however long your lessons are, it's really important not just to go, we've got a computer, we've got to use it. Part of the skills about using ICT is knowing when not to use it, and I think that's doubly important here when you've got something that is potentially so significant.
Well, one thing I picked up on in that particular school that a teacher suggested they could look and see where their pupils had been during the day. That's going to rely on daily updating of the system.
If in a school you get all the teachers having their own laptop and they're beginning to turn to their laptop for their daily notices for what's happening in the school, they're using it for lesson registration to see what children are there, all of a sudden it becomes very easy to turn to that laptop for all sorts of other things. And when you're interacting with it, it becomes easier to put information in as well as get information out. And it becomes a very natural thing. And most important, it starts to save teachers an awful lot of time.
All right, well, I think we've got lots more to discuss, but let's have a look now at our second secondary resource. And this is called Frog Teacher, and the company describes this as a learning platform. But Roger, I think your views on Frog Teacher are that it's more than that.
Well, it is. It contains all of the learning platform functionality, but it also contains the possibility of doing a lot of other things with it. So when a teacher logs on, they will end up in their staff room. They've got their own timetable in here, and you can see this is. Right. They might have some admin functions in here. So this particular example has an IT service desk. And a very important thing in a secondary school is that the senior management team need to delegate responsibility to the departments to set up their departmental areas in the way that they want to do to promote learning.
OK, thanks very much. Well, by sheer coincidence, we did go to another St Paul's Catholic College, this time in Sunbury-on-Thames. But before we visit the school, let's go back to Matthew.
When you log into Frog Teacher as a staff user, you're taken to the staff room page, and this is where you can see the daily briefing and staff shared files. You can also access the school calendar by using the icon on the left. If we go to the classroom section now, this is where you can manage the networked files, which means all this information is accessible from home. The My Room area is where you store all your personal files, but the ePortfolio shows you all the files that you're currently working on. And in this case, I'm working on a front-end web page for my VLE. And you can add new features to your page just by clicking and dragging. It's just like this. I can also tweak the background colour. I can even add shared files, directories and email. And a quick click on the preview button shows you the page as it will appear as students log in. As I said, my webpage is a work in progress, but let's go now to St Paul's Catholic College in Sunbury-on-Thames to see how they're using Frog Teacher.
Frog Teacher, the VLE as we call it, is the way we handle ICT across the school in terms of teaching and learning, in terms of administrative support, marketing, improving communication with parents and other stakeholders.
Your starter this morning, I want you to log on to the VLE as normal and navigate to Project 7.4, Lesson 2.
I had a very clear set of criteria that I wanted to use to choose a system. The first one was that the server, the equipment to run the system was locally stored, so it's actually in the school. The second thing was that it was very, very reliable.
So you've now got 4 minutes to complete this.
I wanted a package that would allow the most technophobic member of staff and members of staff who had no interest in ICT to be able to teach more effectively.
And I want you to log back onto the VLE where we were before. We're in an ICT lesson. We're Key Stage 3. We're Year 7. I want you to save it into My Documents this time because we're going to work on this over the next
I think that really this idea of virtual learning environment, my vision is that very, very quickly it will dissolve into the background. It will simply be as integral to a school as cloakrooms, as desks and chairs.
Ian, when a school chooses what it's going to plump for, it's quite a big decision and costly. How does a school avoid making a big mistake?
I think acknowledging the school's limitations about how much it can understand from what might be either a presentation or a short period of use. Bechter talked a lot about embedding this in the school culture, and that's the only way you can really get to use it, is embedding it in the school culture. I would say you can't really embed something in less than about a year. But it takes a long time it's about culture change. It's about changing the culture of a school, and that's really difficult to do.
I think Ian is seriously underestimating. I would say this is a 3 to 5 year development. And the critical thing is to put the control in the hands of the school and the teachers.
Well, once the school has chosen its system, Ray, are there ways for it to get the most out of it? I mean, are there ways that they interact with the community in the wider sense?
The school we've just seen was a specialist school. It's part of its remit is to work with its feeder schools, is to work with the community. So having a much bigger sense of technology within your school should enable that to happen. If they're helping their primary schools, for example, creating websites, enabling them to use a similar sort of technology, but of course they are entering into this whole transformational phase, because the kids they will get coming up to their schools will have an expectation to use this kind of technology. They'll know how to use this technology.
OK, well, now let's move on to the third secondary level resource we're looking at. And Roger, this isn't a learning platform as such. This is a portal which can bring together different aspects of your digital environment. It's called Microsoft SharePoint. Tell us a bit about it.
SharePoint is a toolkit which allows the building of really big portals which can encompass not just one learning platform but several learning platforms. So if we look at the example we have here of the Shireland Learning Gateway, but it can lead users to the site in Sandwell, it can take them to the learning communities in Smethwick. It can take them through to a whole host of other schools that are linking into the gateway in various ways.
So this is something that's been created using Microsoft SharePoint, is that right?
Yes, the school and the local authority have worked together to create the right kind of overall umbrella environment, and within that to embed the learning platforms that the individual schools are using.
So, I mean, what does the panel think? Well, Ian, what do you think of this kind of portal system?
I think it's okay. I think you're very vulnerable then to what happens at that school. How does that affect the way the portal might run. We take a slightly different approach because everybody's using the same system. Any member of staff can work in any school with the other school's permission, and so can any pupil.
So what you're saying is you don't really need this kind of portal system where you are, because all schools are doing the same thing, whereas this, I'm not quite sure of the distinction here.
It will be different in different areas. In the West Midlands area where Shiland is, you have a number of small local authorities that are all clustered together that need to do their own individual things as well as join together and work together.
Right, OK. Ray, what do you make of this kind of system?
I think one of the most interesting things about it is the way that they're developing content for it, because Shilands itself has some full-time people who create content, and there doesn't appear to be any specific material around at that moment. Then the teachers will get together with the children, or the young people, and create this material and put it up there. And then this will be organic in the sense that it will grow, it will develop, it will share, people will comment on it, and this will then subsequently be developed into something completely different. So the whole idea of the kind of educational content that goes onto these portals or learning platforms is a very interesting point to discuss.
Fantastic. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today, but to recap, the 3 secondary resources we've just looked at are Sims.net from Capita Children's Services, Frog Teacher from Frog Trade Limited, and Microsoft Office SharePoint Server. For more information about the resources featured today, go to our website, that's teachers.tv/resource review, or email us, resourcereview@teachers.tv. A very big thank you to our panel, to Roger, to Ray and to Ian. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.